Okay, so I'll just quickly touch on four groups that we're currently working on. McIntyre powder, and then two in Peterborough, the General Electric plant, and the Peterborough or Ventra plastics plant, and then the rubber workers project. So the McIntyre powder group, the miners who have been registered with OHCOW have totaled 540 over time, of which 480 are active files with us. There are 375 of those with respiratory symptoms or diagnoses, 154 cancers, primarily lung cancers, but then a number of others, as you can see. Sorry, I'm just going to go quite quickly. And neurological diseases, 32 Parkinson's, 7 ALS, which is likely why the intrinsic report looks at that. Although, as far as we know, there's no prior research on that. And if we were to take seriously, so those are 7 ALS cases where we have been able to confirm the diagnosis and to confirm the exposure to McIntyre powder. But if we were to take seriously the reports from other miners and family members, we would say that we know about 15. But that's, again, unknown, unconfirmed. But would be a very high number, I think. 43 with Alzheimer's or dementia, and 109 with some form of memory loss. Pardon me. And then cardiovascular cases, 177 workers, excluding those whose diagnosis is only high blood pressure or high cholesterol. So arteriosclerosis, cerebrovascular disease, etc. So we have a team working on those active files, and they've completed a number of group reports addressing health conditions and mining exposures, including McIntyre powder. And I'll come back to those in a minute. They're available on our website, some of them, the ones that are fully complete. The hygienists have been working on cleaning up and preparing for use in individual files the Ontario Mining Exposures Database, which includes a lot of information on mines in Ontario over several decades. And we've been looking at previously denied WSIB claims and filing new claims for workers where it was supported by the evidence that was found by the team. And those have been mostly cancer claims with exposures in the mining environment other than McIntyre powder as the likely cause, and respiratory claims. And then the team has also been going out and providing updates to workers in Timmins and Elliott Lake, and meeting with the large groups of family physicians in Timmins and the hospital in Elliott Lake to talk about mining exposures and health, again with a special focus on pulmonary conditions and the interactions with smoking. And Dr. Christine Oliver, who's occupational lung disease specialist, formerly an instructor at Harvard Medical School and director of the Occupational Environmental Clinic at Massachusetts General Hospital, provides the main presentation there. And then Andrew also gives his presentation on McIntyre powder and cardiovascular conditions. And then we're also collaborating with Andrew's research at Laurentian, in that case mainly by keeping him supplied with McIntyre powder. And there's also a pilot study currently ongoing with McMaster University at the Radiation Biology Lab on the measurement of bone aluminum in exposed miners with different degrees of exposure, and paired with cognitive testing. So the group reports that are online now on our website. So if you look at the top there, it's just going to the resources section and then the advocate resources, mining exposures and health. But you can, if you put in any keyword into the search engine relevant to this, you will find T's paper and a link to Andrew's recently published paper are the first two. Then COPD occurrence and the relationship of occupational exposures and smoking, which is authored by Dr. Oliver. The McIntyre powder and cardiovascular disease, the particle size and lung overload, and then sarcoidosis, which again was overseen by Dr. Oliver based on current research and which challenges the WSIB's I would say hard and fast rule that sarcoidosis is never associated with occupational exposures. Although as far as we know, all of the claims submitted and in which that paper was submitted have been either denied or had a previous denial confirmed. And we also will have up on the website quite soon a paper on bladder cancer and exposures in Ontario mines, on the lung cancer and gold miners policy, the history that goes into it. It's now quite aged policy, and comparing that with current research, and the same for radiation exposure with Ontario uranium mines and lung cancer. And then also one breaking down, Andrew mentioned the use of a calculation of dust exposure in allowing COPD claims. There's also another one comparing the standard applied by the WSIB to the scientific literature. And that is, the McIntyre work is sort of the model on which the other groups are being organized to a large extent in terms of the ongoing work. The GE Peterborough case is somewhat special though. So this is a map of the plant in Peterborough, which is 38.5 acres in size inside. And you can see a sort of a pink or purple line going through the middle. That's actually a roadway that a semi-truck can drive through. And it's an extremely large plant with many work areas and very complicated exposures. OHCOW has actually been involved with that workplace going back into the 1990s, but we had an intake clinic together with the Unifor local there in 2004, and have over 818 worker files that we've accumulated since then, many of which had independently filed WSIB claims, but OHCOW itself has filed over 300 out of that group. And we have 127 that are currently active. Many asbestos-related diseases and other lung conditions, heart disease, many different types of cancer, and noise-induced hearing loss there. The main change in recent years has been the publication of a report that Unifor funded by Bob DiMatteo and Dale DiMatteo, together with a committee of retired workers from the plant, that details all the different aspects from that map, all the different areas of that building, and what the exposures were and the processes that were going on there. And Unifor has also compiled a database of the MOL reports and Joint Health and Safety Committee minutes, et cetera, from the 50-year period that is cited in that work and corresponds to it. And we've been using that as part of our work on the exposure profiles. And the WSIB has largely accepted it as an accurate account of what's happened in the plant, and used it when they recently pardon me, reviewed the previously denied occupational disease claims from the plant and overturned about half of those denials. So I need to grab my water here. Pardon me. So in terms of our ongoing work, we have an office in Peterborough that's been open since September 2018, and one of the doctors that works with us quite a bit, Dr. Karen, is there 3 days a week, and the office is open 3 days a week. We have several group reports that will be coming out under the auspices of that project, and then be expanded into the other ones because they're cancers that we have in all of these clusters: prostate cancer and pancreatic cancer. And then we're also as well concentrating on the pulmonary diseases right now. And we reported out to the local physicians and meet regularly with the union folks there. And that office is also hooking up with the local legal clinic to make sure that people get referrals, not just for workers' comp, but for other benefits they may be entitled to when they're in financial need. Then the Peterborough Ventra plastics plant in Peterborough we've also been working on since 2004. And in fact, the previous president of the Unifor local there, Rose Wickman, gave OHCOW office space there for many years to do all of our Peterborough work. And we've seen 131 workers from there from a much smaller workforce. So by comparison, GE at its height, and the plant has been around for basically like a century, at its height had 6,000 workers. During a 10-year period recently, for which we had the seniority list, there were only 500 and some workers at Peterborough plant. So we currently have 19 active files with mainly cancers. And the DiMattios have completed a report with current and retired employees. So the current president of the local, Mark Clapper, and Rose, and a number of other workers who are very involved in health and safety issues. And just delivered that to us, the final version, yesterday. It's a little over 250 pages. And they discovered out of that group of, 521 workers. The members of the committee were actually aware of 115 cancer cases, and then a couple of hundred more. I believe it's not added up there, but I think around 300 and some other potential occupational diseases. And those folks are being referred to us by the workers who were on the committee. And we have a sort of a steady stream of workers still coming into all of these projects. And then finally, the Rubber Workers Project, which had an intake clinic in 2002 organized by the steel workers for the Kitchener rubber workers. All those rubber tire plants have now closed, and other rubber plants in Kitchener, the primary ones. And but a group of the workers in the Steelworkers Organization of Active Retirees began pushing to get the workers' comp claims reopened, the denied ones, based on subsequent information, including the IARC's findings on bladder cancer. And the board agreed to do that in late 2018. OHCOW organized an information session in Kitchener then in March of this year that resulted in a number of new claims being filed with the WSIB. It's been reported in the newspaper that there have been 175 new claims filed during this latest round. We had nearly 100 new workers registered with OHCOW at that 2-day information session. And Here's a description of the cases that we're working on there. Again, a broad array of cancers. The WSIB has overturned a number of the previously denied bladder cancer cases, but it appears that out of the 300 that they've reviewed, only about 10% have been overturned as a result of their review. So we will be working on the rest of our active files and producing reports. We also have 3 outstanding requests for what would be quite large intake clinics or a follow-up to what was already a large intake clinic, and more than twice that number that we have been involved with in the past and or are monitoring. So what all of these situations have in common is that they were reported to us by the workers themselves or family members, and they were the ones who really pushed to get our involvement, to get their unions to ask us to be involved in most cases. And here we have Janice Martell, who organized the McIntyre powder project, and 3 people associated with the GE project, Sue James, Jim Dufresne, and Sarah Sharp. And it's really our job in these situations to assemble the team, to provide them with objective expert evidence about what they suspect is going on there. But in every one of these cases, the first encounters with experts look more like this. A denial that there's any increase in disease, a denial that, if there was, it could be caused by anything in the workplace, and so on. And of course, the denial of their WSIB claims. So many challenges facing us in this work. First of all, resources. When you're looking at numbers like that, one of the 3 outstanding that I mentioned has around 900 files in a union local that they want us to look at. We are working on these really in almost exclusively with special teams at this point to allow our usual work to go on unimpeded. The multiple exposures issue, which Paul gave a great presentation on today. Just the limitations of the science, who's funding it, who's deciding what gets funded, and who's deciding what fits to adjudicate a particular case. And the warping of science. Again, we have individual employers funding studies of their own workplace. Industries, in the case of the aluminum industry, which was on a concerted campaign to control what the evidence was about aluminum and neurodegenerative disease for a number of years. The McIntyre Research Foundation actively tried to suppress some studies that did not reflect their theories on aluminum dust as prophylactic for silicosis, and so on. And then just the whole academic publishing process, which is now, other than the movement towards open access in independent journals, has fallen into the hands of a few multinational conglomerates that do not just academic publishing, but corporate intelligence and organizing conferences for different industries and so on. And I think we've seen an impact of that recently in the shuttering of an important occupational medicine journal in the U.S. So, and then finally we come down to the problems of the adjudication, which T was talking about just at the end there. I mean, for anybody who's here as a rep in workers' comp, I would highly recommend that you go actually read Hill's address that was published. You'll be shocked at what he actually says there as compared to what you read in tribunal decisions or opinion letters. Because as T says, it really is filled with warnings against doing it the way that it tends to be done, including a specific statement that just because something does not, some finding has not achieved standard statistical significance is no reason necessarily to dismiss it. He's a thinker who's trying to explain to people how to think about a body of evidence, and for the most part, his criteria have been reduced to a checklist, as T says, and used quite unfairly in a lot of cases. Pardon me. So, thanks. That's it.
Does anybody have any questions for Dave?
Standing between you.
Yeah, standing between you and lunch. Well, he'll be around all day.
From the internet, Val, it says, regarding McIntyre powder, do we have a time period and locations that we know workers were exposed? So any specific information on that?
Is that on the website, Janice? Or?
On my McIntyre Powder Project website, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, so, well, we know in Ontario it was used in every gold mine in Ontario by 1950, and then it continued into the 70s. In the uranium mines, I think it was 6 out of 9 in the Elliott Lake area. And if you go to the website, McIntyrePowderProject.com, there's a list of the specific mines that it was used in Canada and around the world.
Melanie? Oh.
Non-mining industries. Sorry, it was used in silica dust producing industries in the States. That's all on the website as well. And you can follow me on Facebook and the McIntyre Powder Project, and I keep updates on there as well.
Great, thanks. Janice. So, Melanie is also.
Sorry, folks.
For the McIntyre powder, with those huge exposure levels, I just was wondering if there was a potential for take-home exposure, and if there are any studies looking at the family members.
There are no studies looking at the family members, and that's all I can say about it.
Thank you.
It was before the shift, right?
Yeah.
Like if the exposure was before they went into the mine.
Well, and in theory,
Oh, well, there you go. I'm sorry, I don't.
Sorry, Janice is responding that McIntyre powder was also
Afterwards.
prescribed for after shift work
in some cases.
in some cases.
Some mines, yeah. Okay, so great. Thank you, Dave, and thanks everybody for the questions and conversation.